A huge man slapped Hutch's daughter, but Hutch didn't fight back. He simply stared the man down. He didn't want to ruin this rare family vacation, but after walking away, the anger kept building. That slap had crossed the one line Hutch couldn't ignore. Touch his daughter, and you're asking for trouble. What Hutch didn't realize was that the moment he finally struck back, his real problems were only beginning. Picking up after the events of the first movie, Hutch had stormed into Russian mob territory and burned $300 million of their money. He managed to kill the crime boss behind it all, but the destruction left him buried under an enormous debt. His old agency eventually covered most of the damage, and Hutch was forced back into the killing business to pay off what remained. Mission after mission, he became a killing machine all over again. But no matter how hard he worked, there was still a $30 million hole in the books. And while Hutch spent every day hunting targets, he slowly lost touch with his own family. He didn't know how his son Brady had gotten hurt. He had no idea his daughter Sammy had made a new friend. He even spent his wedding anniversary on another assignment. No matter how dangerous a man was, he still couldn't have everything. So Hutch made a decision, one more job. Then he was taking a break. When the target finally appeared, Hutch followed him into an elevator. Seconds later, the entire elevator turned into a battlefield, but the fight was far from over. The moment the doors opened, Hutch found another group of enemies waiting with MP7s. He used a gas cylinder to take them out and made his way into the parking garage. Another wave came rushing in. Hutch pulled off his belt, grabbed a metal pipe, and charged straight at them. Once the mission was done, he asked his handler for some time off. Considering how much work Hutch had done lately, the request was approved. So Hutch decided to take the entire family on vacation, a chance to finally repair the relationship that had been falling apart. And of course, his lovable old man David came along too. For the first time in a long while, the Mansell family was laughing together. The distance between them finally seemed to be disappearing. But none of them knew this peaceful family trip was only the calm before the storm. Before long, they arrived in a small resort town. Excited for their vacation, the family headed straight for the water park, only to be told that an unexpected accident had forced the park to close for the day. Their compensation? A coupon for a hot dog. The mood died instantly. With nowhere else to go, the family headed to a nearby arcade. The moment Brady walked inside, he was completely in his element. His good looks quickly caught the attention of several girls. When he noticed they were short on game tickets, the kind-hearted Brady gave them some of his own. Unfortunately, that small gesture brought him trouble. A local bully demanded an apology. When Brady refused, the guy grabbed Sammy's stuffed animal. Brady snapped and punched him to the floor. Security immediately rushed in. Luckily, Hutch arrived before things got worse. But instead of asking what happened, the guards blamed Brady and told the family to get out. Hutch wanted to argue. His wife Becca quickly stopped him. They were supposed to be on vacation. There was no point making things worse. But as the family was leaving, one of the guards suddenly slapped Sammy across the back of the head. Hutch froze. He stared at the man without saying a word. Then he walked outside. But the farther he went, the angrier he became. And that's when the scene from the beginning happened. Not long afterward, the entire family ended up at the police station. While Becca spoke with the officers, Hutch was busy lecturing Brady for losing his temper. Then Sheriff Abel brought Hutch into his office. The boy Brady had punched was Max, the son of Wyatt, the man who ran the amusement park. Wyatt knew his son had started the whole thing, so he told the sheriff to let Hutch's family go. There was only one condition. They had to leave town first thing in the morning, but Sheriff Abel had no intention of following Wyatt's instructions. Instead, he called in some men of his own. He wanted the Mansells taught a lesson. The next morning, Hutch and his family ignored the warning and continued their vacation. But Hutch quickly noticed police officers following them. Someone clearly wasn't ready to let this go. So Hutch bought 3 boat tickets for his family. Once they were safely on their way, he made up an excuse and told them he would catch up later. Then Hutch boarded another boat alone. It didn't take long for the sheriff's men to follow. They were about to make their move when a group of elderly passengers got in the way. Hutch tried to calm things down. He explained that he only wanted to enjoy a peaceful vacation with his family. Before he could finish, one of the big guys charged straight at him. Another pulled a knife. Hutch blocked the blade with a life jacket. He still didn't want to fight, but they wouldn't stop. So Hutch broke one man's arm and threw the bearded guy overboard. The biggest attacker grabbed a metal pipe. Sheriff Abel moved in to help, only to get the gum knocked straight out of his mouth. Hutch grabbed a life ring and trapped the big man inside it. Now the guy could barely move. All he could do was take the beating. The bearded man finally climbed back onto the boat. Hutch immediately knocked him overboard again. Then Abel picked up the knife and started swinging wildly. Hutch told him to calm down. Instead, Abel sliced off part of Hutch's little finger. Hutch tried to grab the severed piece. Too late. Before he could react, attack, the big man punched him into the water. The others thought the fight was finally over. Then Hutch climbed back onto the boat. Now he was angry. Before, he had only wanted to teach them a lesson. That had changed. Hutch proceeded to beat every one of them senseless. Afterward, he called his brother Harry. That's when Hutch learned the truth about the town. On the surface, it looked like a quiet vacation destination. In reality, the local police and criminals were working together to run a major smuggling operation. Wyatt was only one piece of the system. The real power behind everything was a ruthless crime boss named Lendina. Wyatt had originally started working for her because his father had gone deep into debt building the amusement park. To save what his father had created, Wyatt agreed to help Lendina with her operation. But even after the debt was fully paid, Lendina refused to let him walk away. And when she realized Wyatt was thinking about quitting, she called Sheriff Abel. Her order was simple: kidnap Wyatt's son. As long as Max's life was on the line, Wyatt would keep doing exactly what she wanted. Now that Hutch understood how powerful the people running the town were, he decided to try diplomacy for once. He walked into one of their warehouses carrying a can of gasoline. Then he poured it all over a pile of cash. Hutch told Abel that all he wanted was a peaceful vacation with his family. The moment he walked out that door, everything that had happened between them could be forgotten, but they were never to come near his family again. Abel hated the idea, but if Hutch burned the money and the contraband, Abel would have no way to explain the loss to Lendina. So he reluctantly agreed. Hutch turned around and started walking away. Then Max suddenly fell out of the back of a vehicle. The boy desperately begged Hutch for help. Abel looked at Hutch and silently warned him to mind his own business. For a moment, Hutch kept walking. His own family had to come first. He got into the car and drove away, but he didn't make it far. A few seconds later, Hutch threw the car into reverse. He was a father too. There was no way he could leave a child behind. Hutch stormed back into the warehouse. A brutal fight immediately broke out. He quickly took down several men, grabbed a shotgun from the floor, and started dropping them one by one. Max could only stare in shock. Then the giant from earlier knocked the shotgun out of Hutch's hands. He slammed Hutch onto a conveyor belt and activated a cutting machine. Hutch was being dragged straight toward the blades. At the last second, his hand found a metal rod. He drove it through the man's head and shoved him into the machinery. The immediate danger was over. Hutch was about to leave with Max when he realized Sheriff Abel was still alive. Abel raised his gun. Click. Empty. Hutch aimed his own weapon at him, but instead of shooting Abel, he fired at the light above. The sparks dropped onto the gasoline-soaked cash. The entire place went up in flames. Hutch barely made it outside before the warehouse exploded. The money, the contraband, everything was gone. Lendina soon learned that her warehouse had been destroyed. She immediately called in every fighter she had. Hutch was going to pay. Meanwhile, Hutch moved his family into a small cabin outside town. Then he went to see Wyatt. He needed help, but Wyatt was completely drunk after everything that had happened to his son. No matter what Hutch said, he refused to listen. So Hutch had no choice but to knock some sense into him. Once Wyatt sobered up, Hutch explained that he had rescued Max. Now he needed Wyatt's help taking down Lendina. After years of suffering under her control, Wyatt didn't need much convincing. He immediately agreed. Then he took Hutch to an old weapons cache. The arsenal had belonged to Wyatt's father. He had originally prepared it to fight Lendina himself. Unfortunately, she killed him before he ever got the chance. Now Hutch and Wyatt were going to finish what he started. They chose the amusement park as their battlefield. Wyatt evacuated everyone. Hutch called in Harry and his father David, and the four men got to work. Weapons were placed everywhere. Traps were hidden around every corner. By evening, the entire park had become one giant kill zone. Then Lendina's army arrived. She sent Sheriff Abel in first with one final offer: drop the weapons, surrender, and die quietly. Obviously, Hutch and Wyatt had no interest. Abel returned empty-handed, but as far as Lendina was concerned, he had now outlived his usefulness. She immediately ordered him killed. Then the real battle began. The cheerful amusement park instantly became a slaughterhouse. Wyatt slammed his hand down on a switch. Mines exploded beneath Lendina's men. On the other side of the park, Hutch deliberately exposed himself and lured another group toward the pirate ship ride. At exactly the right moment, he activated the mechanism. The massive ride came crashing into them. Next, Wyatt deliberately stepped into the open. Four men immediately took the bait. Before they could locate him, Hutch triggered another explosive trap. When Hutch Hutch ran out of ammunition. He disappeared into a mirror maze. 3 enemies followed him inside. They had no idea where he was. Every reflection looked like a target, so they opened fire at anything that moved. By the time their magazines were empty, Hutch quietly appeared behind them. Then the explosives went off. Meanwhile, Wyatt was being chased across the park. He managed to reach a minefield with the enemy right behind him. They kept firing without giving him a second to breathe. Then one of them stepped on a mine. Just like that, Lendina's forces were being cut down piece by piece. But Wyatt wasn't getting away untouched. A bullet caught him in the rear. Barely able to run, he limped his way into another ambush zone. The moment the enemy triggered the trap, they were killed instantly. From higher ground, Hutch picked off 2 more attackers with precise shots. When his gun ran dry, he slid down one of the park's slides. The men following him walked straight into another trap. Hutch then lured another group into the open. The moment they appeared, heavy fire tore through them. After the barrage ended, Hutch started to get back up. Then, a man carrying a heavy weapon suddenly appeared behind him. The blast sent David flying. Hutch rushed toward his father, but more killers came pouring in from every direction. At the same time, Lendina's deadliest enforcer, Cartouche, reached the cabin where Hutch's family was hiding. Just as things were about to go bad, Harry appeared. A few flashes of steel later, the other attackers were dead. Cartouche drew his machete. The 2 men immediately went at each other. At first, Cartouche seemed to have the advantage. Thinking he had already won, he started bragging. What he didn't realize was that Harry had only been warming up. Once Harry was ready, he stopped playing around. One clean strike finished Cartouche for good. The cabin was safe, but back at the amusement park, Hutch was still surrounded. He was about to check on his father when a sharp whistle cut through the air. Lendina had finally arrived. Most of her army was dead, but 2 highly trained female bodyguards still stood beside her. Another brutal hand-to-hand fight began. Already exhausted, Hutch struggled against both women at once. Their attacks came non-stop. Hutch was beaten down until he could barely fight back. Eventually, they dragged him in front of Lendina. She looked down at him with pure amusement. Then, she slowly ran a knife across his body. As far as Lendina was concerned, Hutch was already dead. The only question was when she felt like finishing him. Once she was done playing, she gave her bodyguard the signal. The woman pressed a gun against Hutch's head. A shot rang out, but Hutch wasn't the one who fell. The bodyguard was. Wyatt had come back, injured and barely able to stand. He opened fire and took down both women. Now Lendina had no choice but to fight for herself. She shot Wyatt and immediately turned on Hutch with a knife. The blade was seconds away from cutting his throat. Then something suddenly struck her shoulder. A tranquilizer dart. Becca had arrived, and she was holding a tranquilizer rifle. Lendina took one look at the ridiculous weapon and laughed. Then she threw her knife, but Becca's aim was even better. She predicted the blade's path, fired at exactly the right moment, and sent the dart straight through Lendina's eye. The crime boss dropped instantly, but the danger still wasn't over. The remaining gunmen were closing in from every direction. Then David finally woke up. In his hand was the detonator powerful enough to destroy the entire park. The moment Wyatt saw it, he immediately jumped into the water. David hit the button. The entire amusement park lit up. Explosions tore through every corner, swallowing the last of Lendina's men in fire. Hutch and Becca jumped into the pool at the very last second. When it was finally over, Hutch and Becca were taken in for questioning. But just as the officer began the interrogation, his phone rang. Someone powerful was on the other end. The mysterious caller immediately tore into the officer and ordered him to release both of them. No charges, no questions. Hutch had destroyed another criminal empire, and somehow what was supposed to be a quiet family vacation had turned into another war. But this time, at least he had his family fighting beside him.